Good morning. It's Wednesday and it's overcast and a little rainy, a little depressing, but I did plant some seeds in my garden yesterday, so that'll help them. And today we are on to our next artist, Jackson Pollock. Boy on the Move. I know a lot about his adulthood, so I'm very interested to hear about his childhood. Sometimes the best art school is the place where you grow up. As a kid, Jackson Pollock never took any drawing classes, never set foot in a museum, and never showed an interest in painting. Yet by the time he left the West for New York City at the age of 18, he had already learned more about art than any university could teach him. Some kids move around a lot, but few live in as many places as Jackson Pollock did. By the time he was 16, he had lived in 8 different cities in 3 states, from Wyoming to California to Arizona, then back to California twice, and once more to Arizona. Oh my goodness. Here he is in like a moving truck. Here we go again. Hey, Rewind. His family never stayed for long in any one place, but Jackson made the most of his boyhood tour of the western United States. At nearly every stop, he learned something that helped make him one of the world's most recognizable artists. First stop, Cody, Wyoming. Jackson was born in 1912 in this town named for its founder, Buffalo Bill Cody, the great Wild West showman. Though he spent only the first 10 months of his life there, Jackson never stopped reminding people that Cody was his hometown. That's how important the lore of the Old West was to him. In fact, when Jackson moved to New York City to become an artist, he was known for strutting around town in a cowboy hat and boots. Some people laughed at his rodeo garb, but Jackson was just being true to his heritage. Ages 1 to 5, Phoenix, Arizona. After a brief time in San Diego, California, the Pollock family moved to Phoenix when Jackson was just a toddler. His parents purchased a small farm on the outskirts of the city. For the next 4 years, Roy and Stella Pollock raised hogs, cows, and chickens and sold eggs, melons, and apricots at the local market. It was in Phoenix that Jackson learned an important lesson. He was not cut out to be a farmer. It says, he's been staring at that wall for a long time. Look at that inspiration at a young age. Do you know anything about Jackson Pollock's work? Jackson had a hard time adjusting to life in the desert. His family's 3-room adobe house was very small. From April through October, Jackson and his 4 older brothers had to drag their beds outside and sleep in the yard. Oh my goodness. Although the stars shone brightly, Jackson was terrified of the wild landscape beyond. I mean, can you imagine sleeping in Arizona outside? All I think about are like wild coyotes coming to snatch me away in the middle of the night. The other critters you hear, probably scorpions. Oh, yeah. In the daytime, Jackson refused to venture past the kitchen door unless his mother accompanied him. The farthest he dared to go was a neighbor's house, where he hosted tea parties and played with a little girl who lived nearby. On the rare occasion when Jackson did step outside, it seemed as if catastrophe always followed. One day, when he was 4 years old, he found an old log in the barnyard and decided to chop it in half with an axe. Never a good idea. An older boy named Charles Porter offered to do the job for him because Jackson was too young to be using such a sharp tool. Okay. The boys placed the wood on a chopping block. "Tell me where you want it cut," Charles said. Then as Jackson pointed to a spot, Charles raised the axe high and slammed it down, crunk, splitting the log and lopping off the tip of Jackson's right index finger. Yikes. I don't think they're going to be friends anymore. Jackson ran screaming to his mother, who quickly bandaged the wound. To add insult to injury, an old bull rooster had ambled by and gobbled up his severed fingertip. Oh no. Jackson's finger never fully healed. Whenever he was photographed, he always hid his right hand inside his pocket or behind his back. I have a toe that I hide. It's not missing any part, but I had a bone spur. Too much information. I'll stop with that. Yet another disaster befell Jackson when he was riding into town with his mother one day. An angry bull had escaped from its pen and charged at their wagon. The Pollock's horse panicked, sending Jackson and his mother crashing to the ground. Fortunately, a quick-thinking farmer happened to be passing by and was able to scoop them off the road to safety. The frightening incident stayed with Jackson throughout his life. Years later, he still had nightmares about the rampaging beast that had nearly trampled him. Yikes. Doing a little involuntary bull run there. Poor kid. It was only large animals that caused trouble for Jackson. He even had run-ins with little creatures. I'm going to read that sentence again. It wasn't only large animals that caused trouble for Jackson. He even had run-ins with little creatures, too. One time he was tasked with clearing his family's farm of gophers, a job that sounds harmless enough, but not for Jackson. He was in hot pursuit of one of the elusive critters when suddenly it turned and attacked, biting down hard on his hand. Oh. little rabid gopher. Take him off! Take him off! Jackson wailed. His brother Charles swooped in and dislodged the furious gopher. Fortunately, Jackson escaped without losing another finger. Ages 5 to 8, Chico, California. Jackson was not alone in his difficulty adapting to life in Arizona. His mother also wasn't happy there. So in 1917, she convinced her husband to auction off the family's livestock and move to Chico, California, where they purchased a small fruit farm. Picking peaches off trees turned out to be a lot easier than milking cows and slopping hogs, and the Pollock boys had plenty of time for other pursuits. Jackson's brother Charles was the first to become interested in art, a sensitive boy with a talent for calligraphy. Charles dazzled his family with the lifelike drawings of pigs and submarines. At their mother's urging, he was excused from farm work and took weekly painting lessons at the home of an art tutor. Before long, Charles was spending most of his time in his room mixing oil paints and clipping illustrations out of magazines to create a library of art. Not only did Charles love to make art, but he also liked to cultivate the look of an artist. He grew his hair long, wore expensive silk shirts, and using money he saved from his paper route, bought himself a pair of fancy shoes. Although Jackson showed no interest in drawing or painting, he began to envy the dapper, sophisticated image Charles was fashioning for himself. Now, when people asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, Jackson replied, "I want to be an artist like Charles." Look at his brother. So that's his brother playing like a stereotypical artist type role. And then little Jackson being, "He's so cool. I want to be an artist." Long chapter. Ages 8 to 9, Janesville, California. The next stop for the Pollock family was Janesville, a town on the border between California and Nevada. Here, Jackson's parents tried something different, running a small hotel. During the year he spent here, Jackson made friends with 2 Native American boys in his school. Orlo Shin and Cecil Williams were known as the best illustrators in his class. They could draw horses bucking in just about every position. They knew rope tricks too, which impressed Jackson even more. There they are. Woo! With their little rope tricks. I can't say that. Another encounter with Native Americans also left a lasting impression. One morning, Jackson was hiking with his brothers when a group of Wadatuk, I haven't heard of this tribe, so that I'm going to stumble on that, Wadatuk, maybe the T is silent, Wadatuk Indians passed by. The boys followed them to a clearing just outside town. From the shelter of pine trees, they watched as more than 100 tribespeople gathered around a ceremonial pole. Suddenly, a man wearing a bear skin appeared. With a blood-curdling shriek, he charged into the circle. Then he led the group in a ritual called a bear dance. As the crowd began to chant, the bear pulled people inside the circle to dance with him. Others poked the bear with sticks. When the Pollock boys asked about the event, they learned that the Wadacut dancing, as well as painting, was a sacred form of art that brought them closer to the spirits of their ancestors. Here we can see the ceremonial dance with the man in the bear skin. When Jackson grew older, this connection to the unseen spirit world would become a focal point of his own art making. Ooh, this is a long one, you guys. I think I have enough time. Ages 11 to 12, Phoenix again. In 1923, after 3 years in Janesville and the nearby town of Orland, California, Jackson and his family returned to Phoenix. And we're back. By this time, much had changed. Jackson's brother Charles had left home to attend art school in Los Angeles. His father was supporting the family by working as a land surveyor for the United States government. And Jackson was no longer a kid scared of being chased by gophers. Yet, although he had grown up while moving from place to place, Jackson still had another lesson to learn. Always have more lessons to learn. One day, Jackson and his brother, Sandy, were hiking through ancient Native American ruins outside of Phoenix. The boys had often visited the site, exploring the cliff dwellings and hunting for arrowheads. But this time, an altogether different surprise awaited them. With their father leading the way, the boys scaled a high cliff wall and stood on the ledge overlooking Cherry Creek Canyon. There, on the back wall, they discovered a tiny doorway. It led to a secret room used by the ancient Indians who had carved the cliff out of the sheer rock face from more than 5 centuries earlier. Following the beam of their father's flashlight, the brothers gazed upon the wall. What they saw was a set of human handprints left behind by the masonry workers who had toiled inside the chamber hundreds of years before. As the boys took turns placing their own hands against the imprints, Jackson realized that this mark was the ancient Indian artist's way of signing his work. Years later, Jackson Pollock would sign his abstract drip paintings in the same way, with a carefully placed handprint as if to say, Jackson was here. From Cody to Phoenix and all the places between, he had made the West his classroom, and everywhere he went, he learned something new. And there he is. Now it's done. So Jackson Pollock was known for his drip paintings, and it kind of can look like splatter paintings to some people, but it was all about the drip and the action of the drip. So I think it could be interesting for you guys to make your own drip painting. You're going to want to make sure you put newspaper down or plastic and cover the area just in case, but you could practice by doing big drips and little drips and see what happens with when colors mix together, and maybe try to use just 3 to 4 colors, a limited color palette. Another thing I was kind of thinking of, it's sort of related, but maybe you could make your own handprint signature. And the one way you could do that, a simple way for limited materials, you could trace your hand and then just kind of color a design around it, leaving the empty negative space of your hand there. And or another thing, and this one might take a little bit more help and set up with the parents, but you could get I wonder if Kool-Aid would work. This is kind of gross. Put some Kool-Aid in your mouth and then no, you know what? Never mind. I'm not gonna. Parents are gonna hate me for that. Never mind. Make your own drip painting. Let's see how that goes. That's fun. Everybody likes it. Another thing you could do with drip splatter painting is take an old toothbrush and dip it in paint, and then just kind of flick the bristles. So that could be fun. I'm almost out of time here, but I'd love to see your action drip paintings if you make any. So if you're an Evanger student, post on Artsonia. The info to post is on Class Dojo. All right, you guys, try to enjoy today, even though it's gray.